everyone. So
Hello.
I am Laurie Blake of SDR Games. I am the designer of Why We Fight, and with me here today is Nat Mesnard, who is the designer of Assemblage from Scryptid Games. I'm really excited to have you here, Nat. So, I can barely contain myself. You guys funded today. That is so exciting. How are you feeling about it all?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Laurie. It's so exciting to be here. And yes, we funded today. I'm over the moon. I mean, it's stressful to put your game out on to the wider world of crowdfunding and to try to release. And every time I do it, I am honestly like, will people like this? Is my game fun? And when people come and support it and honestly financially backing an indie game project makes me like love the people that did that. So crossing that line just makes me feel like, oh my gosh, like there's people who care about indie projects as much as I do, and it's an incredible feeling just to know that there's like the people I'm familiar with who are my friends and anonymous people out there who are trying to like build this culture as we speak.
Yeah, no, totally. It's amazing. I mean, we're obviously on the same boat here, like feeling much the same thing. But yeah, incredible. It's quite the rush when you finally get that sort of funded notification, and it's just like, oh, this is happening for real. So yeah, so we're here. You've funded. It's going to be real for realsies. So tell us about what inspired Assemblage. It's a pretty unique game. So how did it all come about?
Yeah. Thank you. I love talking about this, obviously. So this is amazing that I get to share a little bit. And I'll try not to go on and on forever because we want to keep these streams short. And I'm excited to get to interview you in the second half. So with that said, Assemblage is a card-based story game of world building and world breaking. And I was inspired by this incredibly cool nonfiction book called The Mushroom at the End of the World by Anna Tsing. And
Cool.
this book, if you haven't heard of it, is an eco-anthropology. It's one way of describing this sort of multi-genre exploration of the matsutake mushroom, which is really unique in that matsutake mushrooms grow best in logged out forests.
Hmm.
So the image you have is by human intervention, vast swaths of trees are cut down. Old growth forests are ruined by capitalism, basically. And
Okay.
then in the sort of blasted landscape that results from that process, these mushrooms come up.
Hmm.
So it's very much this idea of thinking about systems and economies of biological relationship. And I was so inspired by that, both because the systems and economies piece scratches my game designer brain. And then the ecological relationship part speaks to me as a poet.
Oh, wow, amazing. Okay, cool. Okay,
So,
so I mean, you like, so you do game design. Apparently, this is the first I've heard of it, but you do poetry as well. Are you?
yeah.
Do you have any other secret sort of hidden talents nestled away
Oh
somewhere
my
as well? What
gosh.
else do you do?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, I do write poetry, and I feel like sometimes I'm making games for like the poets in my life.
Yeah.
And I actually recently was at a small con called Game Face Con, which happens in Baltimore, Maryland. Just a shout out to everyone involved in Game Face Con because it's an amazing little community of TTRPG nerds and players. But I was able to speak with a poet that is also working with Scripted Games right now on some layout and design stuff. And he was like, "Oh, this is my vibe." Um, and I was like, "Yes, success!" Like I love it when people say that who have that feeling. And I feel like when you like poetry, like you like being happy and sad at the same time.
Yeah.
And I that particular emotional experience is something I really enjoy, and I also wanted to recreate that in the game. So that's part of it. And then to actually answer your question, what are my other secret lives? I also make video games. So
Okay, amazing.
yep. I'm broadcasting to you right now from GDC, which is the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, and I'm attending panels and sessions all week about digital game design. So a little of
That's
everything. Really.
that is very cool. Yeah, I mean, multifaceted to the max. That's very, very cool. I love that. All right, cool. Right. So speaking of design, Assemblage is a GM-less TTRPG. Players take on the roles of a collective, each determining their unique position within an ecosystem. So that's quite a different type of game to most that people would have experienced. So tell us about designing that a little bit. What was the process with that?
Yeah. So I sat down one day after having read The Mushroom at the End of the World and was just like, what would a game be like if it were about the topics and feelings of this book? And within that, I sort of came up with some creative prompts that I thought would work. It was very loose. It was me sitting with my notebook and jotting some things down. I ended up sketching some weird animals, which, weird animals are very much a part of the game as it is now. And I played it with my partner actually with basically no rules. So we play stormed just to be like, okay, given these like sketched in creative prompts, let's create a version of this. And the core thing was forming an ecosystem using ecological relationships was the first idea I had. So with that, I thought as a creative prompt, how would we make up two animal species that have a particular relationship like symbiosis? Um, then together coming up with, okay, if this one's symbiotic with this one, how biologically do they relate with each other? And then from that relationship, what are their bodies? What are their habits? How do they communicate? How do they get around? Are they stationary? Can they run? Do they have
Mm,
wings? Are they a mushroom? What is it? And that was really fun to just think about that. So
yeah.
that was the seed. And then from that point, it was like, okay, now how do you scaffold that so it can be reproduced by someone other than the game designers who just like made this idea up in this moment?
Incredible. Okay. Well, I that sounds like a fascinating way to go about it, but also I'm not the only one here. I noticed there's a comment here. I've been sort of sitting here thinking to myself, I got to mention that Playstorm does an amazing phrase, and then someone else here in the comments as well is just like, oh my god. So yes, that's a hell of a thing. Yeah, I mean the act of coming up with an idea and just being like, okay, let's just run with it, see where it takes us, see what interesting avenues we discover, and then building a game around that is a hell of a thing. So, I mean, it's one thing to design such a thing that way, but obviously after a while you need to sort of refine it. You need to make it into a proper, solid game that is able to be used by people without you guiding them or anything like that. So so tell me a bit about playtesting it. Like, you must have built up
Mhm.
quite like a interesting little community base that built this with you and helped you refine it into what it finally is. Yeah, it must have been fascinating putting it in front of players for the first time. Tell us about it.
Yes. I'm so glad you asked about this. I have done the majority of my like big play tests for Assemblage at a designer con called Metatopia, which happens in the grand town of Morristown, New Jersey,
Okay.
which I'm New York based, so it's actually very accessible for me. It's like an hour on the train, which is so amazing because some of the designers who I'm inspired by go to Metatopia and test new games there. You really see a lot of the people who work on story games and innovative TTRPGs, as well as people responsible for some of the classic titles that everyone knows and loves and takes inspiration from. Um, so yeah, I went to Metatopia with a very early version of this game. And I was really lucky because some of the people at that table were people I knew already. And having some friends and some strangers was a great mix. The folks who knew me already were like, we got you. We know you're saying this is an early prototype and you don't know how it works totally. We're going to play storm and figure out like exactly how this works. And then some of the other people were like, I have no idea who you are, but I picked this because I'm really into the idea that you described in the description for the playtest. So that first one that I did, I think it was 2 Metatopias ago. The way they played the game actually helped me structure the narrative arc that I now, every game of it, I have rules to reproduce. So I didn't have a set structure for how the storytelling was going to happen. I just had these core narrative beats that I wanted folks to do and corresponding like elements of play. But then that group created this unbelievably impactful, like I cried level of like amazing narrative. And from that, I've like modeled the game on that particular version. So it's been very collaborative, and every time I playtest it, and I've done several playtests at 2 different Metatopias, and then with students in my game design classes, friends and collaborators in the Scryptid Games universe, I feel like every group contributes something to the rules in this like a cumulative way that feels like I'm building an ecosystem. So it's felt like an ideal game to like have a collaborative game design process happen.
Amazing. Okay, that's really cool. And I'd just like to point out a little bit there where you're like, okay, yeah, I'm game designer, poet, video games. You're apparently a teacher too now. We're just adding to the list here. My goodness. All right, cool. So before we add any more secret professions to the list, tell me about, like, obviously we linked up before. When we first sort of joined Pocketopia and we were getting to know everyone, we saw some sort of connections between our games and decided to link up for this. And I've been excited for this ever since. That was like months ago. What jumped out to you? What made you think, Assemblage and Why We Fight, these are linked in a really good way? What was that connection?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm really excited to answer it because I personally love what my partner calls dudes on a map games.
Yeah.
And I don't design games like that because my background is a little bit more on the softer side. The storytelling and creative writing is where I come from into games. And then, but I also have a crunchy brain. And so I love to play games that are more crunchy, more mechanics driven. And I feel like there's this really cool spectrum between the two games, between that sort of soft world building, sort of expansive, squishy, psychedelic gameplay experience that is something that is like the poet's game.
Mm-hmm.
And then like in your game, it feels like I get to do dudes on the map, but it like fits my ethics. Like a lot of the crunchier, more combat and like martial games that I enjoy, to be honest, because like I love games, right? And I will play almost anything. But I often have the experience of like internally critiquing the larger implications of my participation in games like that.
Totally.
And with yours, I was like, oh, like this is the like queer game spectrum, right? We get the crunchy, like punch Nazis and like get to still do dudes on a map. And then we have the like queer visionary, like post-apocalyptic psychedelia. And it just felt like the perfect intersection of my audience preferences. So it was like if I could have 2 games in my library that were to represent the range of like who I am as a player, I feel like it would be like my game on one side of the bookshelf and then your game on the other, and that's like diagonalizing me. So that was
amazing.
Honestly how I felt. Yeah.
What a great answer. Okay, I love that. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we're obviously at time pretty much. We're gonna transfer over. You're gonna ask me some questions. That'll be fun.
Yes.
Beforehand, I just want to mention when I was looking at Assemblage and I was like, I want to partner with these guys. I was looking at your game and the rundown of how it all works, and I thought to myself, like, the thing that really fascinates me about it, and the thing that intersects with Why We Fight for me, is that sense of evolution. One of the core things that I really wanted to create with Why We Fight was this sense of a changing world. And that to me really, really shone through with Assemblage. You know, I looked at this game and it was like, you're not just changing this world, you're actively building it, and you're creating something that makes you really attached to it. And then you're breaking a part of it and deciding how does this reform? How does this change? And that's so critical to both games. And I was like, this main bit here, this is why we need to link. So yeah, that's just to give the other side of that, because it was surprising to me that we had actually quite different answers. Yeah, it's very cool, very, very cool.
Yes.
Cool.
Well, yeah, should we? I mean, it's time for me to ask you some questions, right? So we're gonna do a little transition, and then you'll
That's
be in
it.
the interviewee's chair.
Okay, all right, here we go. So I'm gonna do the little transition. And now we're on the Why We Fight side. I'm gonna switch us around. Ba-chang! Now I'm in the interviewee's chair, and I'm gonna sit here and answer your questions. And
Yay!
I'm ready.
I'm really excited. Yes, I hope you're ready.
Oh, before we get started, I just want to say you have a fan here who they backed Assemblage today. So congratulations on your funding from them. That's really, really cool to see.
Yay! Thank you so much. Yeah, I saw your post in the chat, Maya. I really appreciate your watching the show and being with us today. So we will continue to put comments up on the screen if you engage. So thank you so much for being in conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So Laurie, I get to talk to you now, and before we get into the game, I guess the most logical question to ask you would be: do you have any secret professions?
Okay. Well, I mean, so my background was in fiction, and in particular educational fiction. So as a result, it's sort of all the idea of taking quite complex and difficult information and packaging it in a way that makes it really, really accessible and really engaging in particular. So the idea of, you know, particularly scientific information is really interesting because you have quite dry sort of information that you need to sort of package up in a way that presents itself to people as in a story form. And I think that this, in a way, really informed my transition to RPGs, because RPGs are all about creating a story, but in a way that the people themselves create it. So you're facilitating other people making their own stories in a really engaging way, and being able to get that across and get the, I suppose, facilitate the crunchy parts, you know, the mechanics part and everything else like that, to make that seamless, to make that easy to access and to take in without at any point feeling like it's a chore, is in a way a little bit similar to taking sort of scientific information or otherwise and then packaging that in a narrative that makes it fun and interesting for kids. So so yeah, that's my secret background.
Oh my gosh. That makes so much sense, actually, just for connections with my project, because I'm such a like fan of like science things, and like now it's so cool that you're revealing that you have this background, and I'm like, you know, I think Why We Fight resonates for me also just in how the materials that I've read for the game accomplish that so well. It's really just like got this kind of beautiful scaffolding to it to draw you into the process of engaging with what is sometimes detailed like models of what's happening, which has that quality of like learning. And I love learning, which is the nerdiest thing that anyone could ever say.
No, not at all. I think it should be normalized that learning is fun. Like, it's literally self-empowerment. It's the coolest thing. You just like, you know, this thing now. Oh my God, it doesn't go away. So no, 100% on board with that. That's not nerdy at all. That's really cool.
Yay. Well, I want to ask you about the inspiration for the game, but chat is prompting me to ask you about 101 Dalmatians.
Okay, okay. So yes, I'm going to assume that this is in reference to I used to be very involved with an amateur dramatic theater company. So my other secret thing is that I am an actor as well. You know, it was kind of a long time ago at this point. I haven't done it in a while, but yes, I played an amazing dog. You know, I had the nose makeup. You know, you had the spots and stuff like that. You had the prop. Yeah, it was the whole thing. I didn't have blue hair at the time, so it was a little easier to pretend to be a dog. But nonetheless, yeah, you know, that was me in a past life. There we go.
Oh my gosh.
Educational
Well,
writer, board game designer, RPG designer, and dog.
yes. All right, we've now like officially like mapped both of our realities, which is like many intersections. Let's go on to of course, you know, we've been talking about why we fight, but let's hear about the inspiration for it. So how did you get started on making this game?
Okay, so honestly, Why We Fight started out as kind of a little private project that was kind of an outlet, truth be told. I just kind of finished releasing Earth Rising, which is a board game all about transitioning our world from a unsustainable present to a sustainable future. So it doesn't use any it doesn't use any science fiction sort of solutions or anything like that. What we have is accessible to us. It all exists already. And if we make that transition across 20 years, we can change the world, make it in balance with nature, make it better for people, whole works. It was an incredible educational journey for me alone making that game. But I sort of came from a perspective of when I first started making it, a bit like you with your ecological, you know, learning about ecosystems and going, oh, this so fits perfectly with my systems thinking brain. I can see how this fits together. It makes such a perfect pattern. Earth Rising was the same for me. And I was like, if we could just know how to address this, if we could make something that makes it obvious and easy for people to understand, then we'll be able to, it'll be part of a whole that will help people go, oh, I know how to fix this. This is fine. We can overcome this problem. This is great. And that was all cool. But 5 years on, I was sort of starting to realize that you've frozen. I'm going to continue anyway. I was starting to realize that the whole I shouldn't wait for you. I think I'm still live. I think it's Nat that's frozen. But nonetheless, we have the will to change things. It's the problem is that we don't have the power to do so. And so for me, Why We Fight was Why We Fight was the means through which I could create a way for me to feel like I had that impact, you know, to go on little missions and change the world in my own little way. And I created this sort of thing in my own time, a solo thing that allowed me to go out and do that. But over time, I sort of realized that the most important part of all of that is it's our ability to interact. It's our ability to create community. It's our ability to teach each other about a better way. And I discovered that I really wanted to make it actually a multiplayer game. And the more I took it out and the more I tested it with other people, the more I realized that this was actually a game that people really wanted to see. So then we took it on as a proper project, and here it is. So
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So the idea of like, let's make this a multiplayer game and thinking about like it being like a community experience. For one thing, like that really resonates for me. And I'm very interested in games that are not just, you know, community designed and play tested, but games where you play as a group of people are so interesting to me because in my game, you're playing as a species. And then in Why We Fight, you get to be a crew. And I love that. And I actually wanted to ask you about this idea just around the process you experience when you create the crew. Because in my play of Why We Fight, what I thought was so cool about it is you kind of outline this group of people And then you experience this process of emergent character creation as the game continues.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to talk to me about designing that and all the details there.
Okay, cool. So yeah, honestly, one of the things that kind of inspired that whole idea was it was a game called Valkyria Chronicles, long sort of time ago that came out, and you have these characters, and they sort of have all these different personalities, and how you put them together on the field determines whether or not they work well together. You know, you don't want to put the chatty person with the lone wolf, because they'll piss each other off and then their combat stats will go down. And I'm like, okay, that's a really cool thing. Like, I like that their personalities have bearing. You know, you don't take someone with a dust allergy on a desert mission. Like, that makes sense. I like that. And so that was kind of the origin point. And then the more I played with that idea of like people's personalities being a factor, it ended up being that like you kind of either had to come up with them all at the beginning, like you would normally with an RPG, but as we played, as we tried it, we discovered that like creating things as you go in response to the things you experience was such a more powerful thing. And it created this real sense of like, you're on this journey with these people, you're getting to know these people as you travel with them, and their experiences literally shape them. So you don't just see like a person having some experiences, you see a person having an experience, and you learn about them in the process, and you feel connected to them because you shared that experience with them, and you've grown them in a way that you feel is accurate, is, you know, it resonates with you in some way. And that emotional connection to people, I felt like was something that I'd always really wanted in RPGs, that sort of building on how people feel as a mechanic, as opposed to just your stats and your skills and things like that. So the emergent character creation element of it became this fascinating thing that I myself really enjoyed exploring, where you're sort of going out and you're discovering stuff, and you're having these experiences, and sometimes they're bad experiences and they're hardships, and you have like you have either potentially a wound means that you have some long-term issue, or perhaps it's that you discover someone has a phobia and they haven't spoken about it before because it hasn't been relevant, but suddenly you realize, oh no, they have this fear of heights, and it turns out that's what's holding them back, and it becomes a whole thing. And you learn who these people are through the experiences they have, and it's just been amazing to see how much people have connected with it as a concept. So yeah.
Yes, I connect so much with it. I think that it's really important not to put people in a trap of their previous creativity. Like, I've experienced like Dungeons and Dragons where you feel obligated to carry out this character concept you made up in the absence of storytelling context with the people who are actually playing and the situations you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And you've designed a system that lets us be responsive to what's happening and realize in context with our friends what would make sense as an important characteristic of this person or this group of people. And I just feel like that's what I crave, is like, I'm like, I want context and then I can be creative. And this game is explicitly permissive of that, which that's just, it's so generative. And when we play tested it, I was like, I love this. I want to make up more crews.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've really noticed when people have been playtesting it, and we've been playtesting it a lot this last weekend because we were at AirCon, which is a UK expo, and what people kept sort of saying was, at the beginning when I made my crew, it seemed kind of it seemed kind of low and simple, and you didn't know too much about them. And then as you travel, as you learn these things about them, you not only make space for your new ideas of, actually you perceive this person in a different way, and actually maybe this person is like this, and you create not just the people in front of you, but like a new direction in terms of your own experience of the game. And what if we went in this direction actually, and what if this character actually cares about this? And that's really cool. And I it's been so much fun seeing people adapt not just their characters but also their mindset towards their experiences. That's been really special to see for me.
I really love that. So we're almost at time. In fact, we are at time, but there's one more thing I want to talk about. And it actually responds to a question that Maya asked in the chat, which is about our collaborative reward that folks will get if they back both campaigns. I'll hand this to you as the final question on just kind of what's exciting you about this, and kind of what it is and what the future of it is.
Yeah, so yeah, collective action is. I mean, it was you and me that kind of came up with a lot of the
Yeah,
bits for it, and we've sort of
yeah,
built it up with our respective teams. And I'm really excited for it because it kind of takes the two core elements of both games, which is like exploration and adaptation, and it kind of slams them together, and means that both sides kind of have to do that in really, really interesting ways. So you go out there as a team or like a crew of community alliance people on a little scientific mission, and you discover the other players that are also playing. So it could be two players that are playing on opposite sides, or it could be like four players on either side, or one player playing the ecology and a couple other players investigating it. And as you arrive and you start exploring it, you determine some actions that you're taking, and then you pass this over to the ecology, which has started building its own little bits that you're investigating. And then in turn, that ecology has to react to you. So you have this actively changing and adapting island that is I don't know, it's kind of, it gives me quite science fiction-y vibes, where you're sort of like,
yeah,
what is this place doing? And it's got all these things that we thought we made assumptions about, and then all of a sudden it's changing based on the fact that we took some samples. And I'm just trying to understand it, and it's really not liking me, or it's really liking me, and it's liking me a bit much actually. And
right.
it's I cannot wait to see how players adapt, and how players take a differing stances from both sides, but working on imbalanced information. So one side thinks they know what they're dealing with, and the other side only has so much to go on. And it's this, yeah, it's. I'm really, really excited to work on it with you, I gotta say. So yeah, it's a duet
Yes.
game. It's this kind of duet thing where you're both investigating each other and reacting to each other's actions. And I'm very, very excited to both make and play this thing, to be honest. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely likewise. And we will definitely try to post updates on its development. This is this incredibly cool project we get to do together because of Pocketopia.
Mm,
And, I think to put a button on this conversation, I would say, there is an aspect of crowdfunding that's about making money to try to support games to exist. Then there's this other side to it where we get to have like meet cutes with other like awesome indie companies. And then that can result in more collaborative game design work like this. And for me, that's been just a huge like treasure of working on this specific campaign, which is just to dig into the design work behind both games, think about like the design of these games is very different, but I feel like the
mm,
heart of both games resonates. So it's like just
absolutely.
been really cool to like do this with both projects. And we've been doing this on this call, so like that's also awesome. And
Yeah.
I appreciate that you took the time out of what is inevitably a busy schedule for you amidst a very successful crowdfunding campaign to chat with me for this 30-minute block.
I mean, you're the one at GDC, so I also appreciate you taking this time. And yeah, honestly, I've learned a lot about you. You've learned a lot about me, and it's been a ride. Like, it's been great. I love it. So yeah, we should do this again if we can nearer the end of both of our campaigns. And it would be. I mean, I'm really looking forward to working on this with you, and in general, just really excited now that your campaign is funded. We've got this like absolutely 100% happening, and that has made my day 100%.
Yay. Well, I'm also grateful to everyone who joined us in the chat. Thanks for listening
Yes.
out there. Our backers, we love you guys. So thanks for keeping the chat warm and alive while we've been talking. It's been nice. I can see it rolling on the side, and yay, thank you to everybody. So we'll look forward to being with you again if we do get to do another one. And Laurie, I look forward to designing with you and continuing collaborating on Why We Fight and Assemblage.
Absolutely. All right. Right. I'm going to pack this down now. Thank you, everyone, for coming along and watching. And if you're watching in another time, then thanks for watching anyway. I will, I'll catch you all on our respected campaigns. If you haven't backed Assemblage, go and back it. It's fucking great. I'm going to say goodbye. I've been Laurie Blake. It's been a pleasure. This has been Nat Mesnard. It has also been a pleasure. Bye, everybody.
Bye.